Hello, folks. Welcome to the PR Bunker podcast. This is the last podcast for 2025. And as somebody who has been playing video games and being a kid since I've been a kid, it's really fitting that I ended up finding my new friend, Bob, who, unbeknownst to the visual here, we are not brothers from another mother, but we kind of look the same. But Bob, I appreciate you joining me here in the last episode of the PR Bunker podcast. Welcome to the Bunker.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I met Bob through a communicators, TCN, which is a communicators network where PR folks, communications folks talk shop, talk media, talk trends, just have a nice safe place for us in the bunker grinders and communications to have conversations. And immediately hit it off with this guy, was interested in his background. And as we got to know each other, I said, man, this guy gets to play for a living, which I think is kind of cool and has a lot of great stories. But Bob, tell our audience about your story and how'd you get to where you are today.
So when I was in college, and this means I'm going way back into my story, but when I was in college, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a living. And at the time, I had just started collecting action figures. And I was also a huge comic book collector. I figured it would either be fun to play with toys or read comic books for a living. And then I tried to figure out how that would work. And I realized PR touches everything, and I would eventually figure it out. So I ended up getting my first job at Edelman, which, one of the largest communications firms in the world, with no real idea of how I was going to make it to toys. But the interesting thing I realized was that once you start pitching and working with consumer products, you can figure out pretty much how to do everything. And it all relies on that same instinct I had to get into PR, figuring out what your passion is. So back in college, I was originally a computer science major before I went to journalism to become a comms person. And I was a diehard PC guy. Macs were terrible. I hated Apple computers. But my first big client was Apple. And this is like 1998 Apple. There's no iPhone. There's no iPod. They're just coming back from the dead. Steve Jobs is launching his first product line. And I had to pitch Apple and figure out what I liked about it. So I started playing with the computers and came up with this entire line of things that I liked and integrated that into all my pitches. And we were hugely successful. Once I kind of figured out the magic of that, everything basically became easy. And I found myself 3 years into my career working at FAO Schwarz. So I was able to kind of take that idea of working within your passion and figure out how to make it work. So my entire career became, for at least 15 years actually, playing with toys, talking about toys. And if you're waking up every day, going to a toy store, playing with toys, and figuring out what toys are going to be hot for kids and talking about that, you're never going to run out of things to say or talk about. But outside of FAO Schwarz, they kind of had a little bit of a bankruptcy issue back in 2003. I didn't make it out of that first one. So I went to a small agency where I ended up working with Hasbro. So I got to play with G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Star Wars for work. And those are like the three brands that kind of made me who I am. And from there, it was really a lot of the same stuff, just focusing on what I liked about each toy line, what I thought was cool, but also relying on my insane history of toys, comic books, and cartoons to write these weird pitches that made these toys stand out.
Love that.
Shortly after that, I went to Toys R Us. I worked half the week out of the Times Square store and spent 7 years there. I was the guy who ran a lot of the holiday hot toy list. So if you ever were wondering what you would get somebody for Christmas for those 7 years I was there, chances are, there was a huge amount of science behind it, but there's a chance that I was actively involved in telling you, here's the hot toy. They also had me do interviews with newspapers, magazines, TV.
So you're to blame. You're to blame for all those parents that had to run to the store, fight over the thing on the shelf, like just get in their fight club to make sure that little Timmy had the so-and-so hot toy of the year. Wow, you mastermind. You devilish mastermind, you.
It's a lot of fun. There was a lot of science behind it. It wasn't just, hey, I think this toy is cool.
Really?
We looked at a lot of numbers, projected sales. There were tests that ran. So a good example, I doubt you remember this toy, but there was something called Zuzu Pets. I want to say it was 2009, and they were little robot hamsters.
Yeah.
And we kind of looked at it from the perspective of, the economy's not doing very well this year. The big toy is usually $50 and up. You could package 5 of these $10 toys and have a decent gift. Or you can buy one as a stocking stuffer. Or if you weren't financially sound in 2009, you could just buy one, and that's still a great gift. But we were able to look at these sales in a test market. It was, I believe, Phoenix, Arizona, and saw these things flying off shelves. So while I kept pushing that thing onto the hot toy list, my boss was dead set against it for a while. Once she saw the numbers and our projected sales, it kind of made sense. I was then able to convince the Associated Press that the story wasn't the hot toy list. It was the fact that parents were online trading these Zuzu pets, saying, I need Mr. Squiggles or I need Num Nums, let's trade, showing there was this embedded interest in this toy and it was going to dominate. And then that became the story for
Interesting.
the entire year.
What happens? So obviously with toys, it's seasonality, right? You have Christmas and the holidays, and you have birthdays, but in between those moments, right? How do you keep those communications and PR flames rolling? I mean, clearly kids always want toys, right? They always want something. You're rolling through the store, and mom's picking up toilet paper and beauty products, and you stroll by the toy aisle, and you're trying to drag your kid as fast as possible, but those end caps are going to catch you. I mean, what were the challenges like during those not so holiday moments for you to kind of get the ink?
So you're right. And I should point out, after I worked with Toys R Us, I also worked with Target doing some of their toy stuff. So I have a lot of embedded
Oh, wow.
ideas of how people can make this work
Sure.
throughout their entire year. And it really came down to, you mentioned seasonality. So we would look at ways to make Easter a toy holiday, or we would look at collectibles. So Target did an initiative at one point that was just focused on collectibles. So it was an end cap in the toy aisle that was just these insanely limited edition toys. For Toys R Us, we would look at different movies or different events. So if you remember the movie Happy Feet with the dancing
Oh, yeah.
penguins,
Great
we
flick.
did feature shops in our stores that were like, these little kind of store within stores. We would go out to the media and say, hey, this thing is hot right now. Would you like to film kids buying the toys or parents talking about them or our store managers explaining the line for anybody not in the know? And a great example of that was back in 2008, there was an animated Star Wars movie, The Clone Wars. We actually did an entire campaign around the Clone Wars where we were the only retailer who seemed to care about it. So we did entire feature shops in all of our stores. We did midnight launches for the toys. I did a simultaneous launch in Times Square and San Diego at Comic-Con, really to drive the media around it. We also did philanthropic initiatives throughout the year. So we worked with Autism Speaks, Toys for Tots,
That's
Alex's
great.
Lemonade Stand, really to kind of say, hey, you can come here, buy toys for XYZ, but also donate and feel good about the missions that we're doing.
Very cool. I mean, the Alex Lemonade Stand thing is pretty near and dear to my heart, which is the first time this topic has ever come up in a podcast. When my kids were 8 and 5, on their summer bucket list was to do a lemonade stand. And my oldest said that she wanted to give the money away to somebody, folks that needed it. My wife did some research, came across Alex Lemonade Stand Foundation. We've been doing a lemonade stand here at the house since then. My kids are now 22 and 19. We've raised close to $85,000 doing it over the years, and the kids have won all types of awards, and have gotten stuff, through the city, the keys of the city. So Alex Lemonade Stand is such a great organization. We love supporting it, and I love those tie-ins. I got to ask you this follow-up because your passion is sort of this space. I mean, how many pinch me moments have you had? And if you had to rank them, like what's the one or two pinch me moments? Like, I actually do this for a living. This is kind of wild. Like, talk through that.
So my favorite one, and this is kind of something that's so out there and so weird that only I could have ever come up with it. But part of my job at Toys R Us was running the electronics and entertainment communications. So that includes video games. And while I'm not the hugest gamer in the world, I got some passion there.
All right, I love it.
And I love the Batman Arkham series. So I actually flew out to E3, which was at the time a huge electronics show. It was Electronics Entertainment. I can't remember the 30, but it doesn't matter. And my goal was to get video game companies to do events at Toys R Us Times Square to launch their products. My biggest win was I got Warner Brothers to come to Toys R Us Times Square to launch Batman Arkham City. And I got them to do it at a midnight event a day before the game was live.
Oh, it's
And
sick.
generally, it was so I could play the game a day early. That was my biggest reason for convincing them to do that.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that it worked was kind of insane. I was so passionate about it that I was able to turn it into a fun event, but also I asked them to give me 3 things to really make this event sing, and it was all about a signing event. I wanted Kevin Conroy, who at the time was the voice of Batman, both in the animated series and in the game. I wanted Sefton Hill, who was the game studio head creator, and I wanted a guy named Paul Dini. Paul Dini is a writer. He wrote a lot of Batman the Animated Series episodes, like he created Harley Quinn, I believe, and he also wrote the games. So they said yes to Sefton Hill. They said yes to Kevin Conroy. They said no to Paul Dini, but instead they gave me a guy named Jim Lee. Jim Lee is one of the hottest artists ever in comics, and I'm not sure if currently that's his title, but he was the co-publisher of
Wow.
DC Comics. So
Very
I
cool.
literally showed up to this event that I created out of thin air with a stack of comics, because I collected comics for about 35
Oh,
years.
wow.
And I have Jim Lee signed comics, including he actually yanked the backing board out of one of my books and did a little sketch of the Joker right as we were sitting there. So
Very cool. Very, very cool.
huge pinch
And
me
did you
moment.
have the Batmobile there?
I do have the Lego Batmobile, not the
There you
real
go.
one. I mean, I can't
Nice.
fit the real one in my house.
Yeah, no kidding. Which would be nice. Well, when you hit Powerball one of these days, you can go out and get a replica and buy one, and
Seriously.
put it in your garage. So what's that's fantastic. Love the arc, love the story, love the passion. You can see it in your face, and I can see it in the background as well. What's cooking now? What are you focused on as we close out 25? What are you looking forward to in 26?
So as we're working in 2025, currently my biggest client is an agency called Impact Partners. And it's really interesting. They focus on founders, finance, and family offices. And it's finance, which I never had a passion for, but it goes back to that idea of once you figure out what the story is and what interests you, you can take that concept and fold that into your pitches. I'm working with New Vintage Partners, and they're a secondaries firm. I'm not really going to explain what that is, but what I was really interested about was listening to how the two principals talk about what they do. I was listening in on a podcast, and the one of the founders used a term that was asymmetric alpha. And right there, I was like, that's a really interesting term. Let me figure out how I can turn that into a pitch. So I'm looking at how I can use their information and turn that into stories for me. I'm working with a venture capital firm called Evolution Equity, and they're
Nice.
the largest fund for cybersecurity in the world at
Wow.
$1.1 billion
Huge.
dollars.
That's big.
So you look at these things that are kind of not generally in your wheelhouse. I mean, it's nowhere near toys, but it's interesting, it's unique, and I just kind of found a way to find niches within what they're talking about
Yeah.
to tell these different stories.
And what's the beauty of I think our space in communications marketing is that you literally can transfer the skills to any particular industry. It's we kind of get paid to learn every single day, whether it be financial exchanges, toys, networking, nonprofits. I mean, I did some work with a turf company for a while years ago. I know enough about turf to like really think it's kind of weird. Like MBA design, fundraising strategies, major gifts, enrollment marketing, and yield and melt, and all these things you just pick up and like sometimes you'll be in a conversation, a networking event, and like, and you spit something on, you're like, where the hell did I pick that thing up? Like, how, like sometimes my kids are like, where'd you learn that, Dad? Did you Google it? I'm like, no, I mean, I worked on this client back in 1998. So, and I'd love to, at this point in the conversation, pivot to like networking. I think as communicators, we're the guys that turn to the table next to us at dinner and say, hey, did you try the chicken parm? My name's Don. Nice to meet you. Talk to me about your networking strategy. Clearly, you haven't had this level of success without grinding, networking, meeting people, and being sort of that typical communicator. But what is your strategy around networking and meeting people to either learn or grow you from a professional standpoint?
So it's really interesting. I found an insane network way back when I went to FAO Schwarz. And the reason was it was a small department, and I knew my manager because he was my first boss at Edelman. But I was like, what if I have an idea that's so ridiculous that it gets me fired? I need guardrails. So I found a group called Young PR Pros, which clearly none of us are young PR pros anymore. And this was
Speak for yourself. Kidding.
in the time of Yahoo Groups. So we're talking way back.
Yeah.
And I found this network that just has supported me and worked with me for decades. Beyond that, I found things like you mentioned it before, the communications network, which is a Slack network that I'm using for networking. And I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. The first client I found on my own for my company was because I started noticing somebody visiting my LinkedIn page, and he lives in East Rutherford, New Jersey, which is like 10 miles away from me. And his agency focuses on toys and comic books. And I was like, huh, even if there's,
Interesting.
yeah, but I was like, even if there's no work, I should probably know this person. So I just sent him a message. I'm like, hey, I saw you were on my page. We live close together. We seem to have a lot in common. I'd love to get to know you. And it turned out they were looking for somebody to do some freelance work for them on a brand called Gundam, which is
Oh, wow.
a huge anime brand
Yeah.
ranging back 50 years and
Huge.
doing work on the toys. So I ended up months later doing some work with them for about 6 months. But I use LinkedIn a lot. I use TCN and just going out in public. I actually joined the local government in my town, mostly so I can meet people and potentially figure out ways to find local work.
Yep.
Because
Smart.
you mentioned background before, like without knowing a lot about me, I talked a lot about toys, but I've also worked in consumer electronics, cannabis, pharma, health and wellness. There are so many local stores around here and local shops. Like a cannabis company just opened on, I think, December 19th. And I'm like, I should reach out to them and go
Yeah.
over there and be like, hey, I'm Bob, need PR. I live down the block.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that leveraging the connective tissue with your story to other stories. For example, I am also very active in my local community, on the executive board of my local chamber, on my library board, the new building that we're building for the high school, that committee. I mean, I am networking my butt off all the time, and people ask me, how do I allocate so much time? Well, so there's 24 hours in the day. It's about how you stack up the things you'd like to do in that 24 hours outside of time with the family or wives, kids, girlfriends, dogs, whatever happens to be. And then just prioritizing the day. I manage my day by every 15 minutes, right? I can't boil the ocean, though we all as communicators try to boil the ocean all day long. But like, what am I doing today? What am I doing in the next hour? What can I get done in the next 15 minutes? And for me, it's about not the entire 3,000 piece puzzle, but the corner piece and then the edge piece and just working my way through it. And sometimes I screw up and I'm like, ah, shit, that sucked. But for me, networking and reaching out to people. At one point, I was the guy that hated going into a room, introducing myself to people and having those conversations. But then I realized everybody there is doing exactly the same thing, right? Word of mouth and those connections is the only thing that really stays consistent from today, from the time when you and I were putting a press release in the fax machine and we're excited to hit a single button to put that press release out to 10 TV stations. Now with AI and these other tools, everything is expedited. The one commonality in our business when you and I started in this business was our networking, and learning. And that's never going to change. So it's just amazing that, your career goes from toys to finance, but it's all comms and storytelling. I mean, one of kind of couple of last questions here. I mean, where do you think this is all headed? Just our profession in terms of communications, where do we fit in a business? Are we at the C-suite? What's our role, and how do you feel like your work with your client is shaping their business? And so, talk about the future kind of scale of what's going on in PR and comms.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think a lot of people are so worried about AI taking our jobs, and you are seeing an impact on our industry right now because of AI. But I think so many people forget that the fundamental thing that AI can't do is understand the entire problem from top to bottom for a specific company. It can look across the board and try to apply. We belong, I'd say, from the C suite on down. We need to be able to create the message, but also respond in a way that is human. And AI can mimic humanity, but it can't actually have that same connective tissue. Like, it can't have the emotional connection to Star Wars that I would have when I was pitching. And one of my greatest pitches was basically me remembering that my friends were dressing in Star Wars costumes that were authentic. I was using them for media ops, and I was like, hey, this would be a fun pitch for Maxim, and I just threw it out there. It's that idea of being able to tie the whole bow that we can still do. I think from that bigger picture, we need to be in the C-suite. We need more chief communications officers because a lot of companies forget what their core mission is and how to communicate that to the people. And when you take away the middle layer of communications folks, you basically have somebody at the top who can do the strategy and maybe somebody at the bottom. But when you're missing that middle layer, you lose all the nuance and all the on the ground work. Like the chief comms officer can definitely do the strategy, but they may not be as in touch with all the beat reporters as they used to be. And once you stop pitching and once you stop having that direct connection, you kind of forget what media really wants because you're stuck in 10 years ago when you were pitching. So I think there's a lot of remembering what the fundamentals are, but taking that to a bigger strategic level, but understanding you need that support level.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the one key thing that's remained constant in the media is that it has to be news, right? A lot of the times, and I'm sure you can shake your head yes to this. Hey Bob, we'd like to put out a press release that talks about this boring thing that nobody was going to care about, but we want the world to care about it. And we expect it to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and the Boston Globe and the New York Times and the LA Times on a Sunday at the same time. Great. Thanks, boss. I'll get right on that. I'm at the point in my career with my clients that I will tell a client it's not news, it's more marketing. However, if we added these particular elements, like a trend, I always talk about the macro and the micro, right? The macro of affordable housing and its impact on seniors on the street versus one of my clients that is focused on ending elder homelessness, right? So finding those micro macros. So it's still you and I are reporters digging for the story. It's just harder because of the volume of content out there. And not everybody's a pen and notebook reporter these days. You've got folks that own Substacks and websites that get thousands of views, but those communities are just as important. So to your point, we've got to stay on this stuff using AI and LLMs to like do kind of real time digging and research. And it makes our job harder, but it's still about good storytelling, good timing, good relationships, and also a little bit of luck from time to time.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think there's something that a lot of people don't remember, and you kind of just hit on it. It's understanding what is news and what is fiction. And a lot of people, I just had a client, and before I signed them on, they're doing an index of, startup friendly cities. And I looked at it and I said, okay, what's the methodology? Because without understanding what the methodology was, I couldn't tell if it was news or if it was just, hey, this is our opinion of a list. So as a PR person, we also need to dig into the stories we're given. Like you said it yourself, you have to say, this is more advertising. I've gone back to potential clients and I've lost business because they've said things like, oh, what can you guarantee? And I'm like, well, I can't guarantee anything because right
Effort.
now we're in the
That's
preliminary
about it.
discussion.
Exactly. Never guarantee coverage because there's so many like I've had big things set up for media and then something happens with the market or there's a plane crash or there's some politician says something stupid or somebody gets arrested. The news just has this weird pulse
Yeah.
that unless you work in the space you just don't get. So it's just it's an incredible space to be in. So
I,
let me a couple more questions before we wrap up. What are you excited about for 26 for you professionally and personally?
Honestly, I just want to keep expanding the work I'm doing with impact partners. I've been having a lot of fun in this new space to the point where my sister has worked in finance for like 25 years. For the first time ever, I had a conversation with her that I understood what she was talking about. So I want to continue to work with them and grow not just my personal business, but their business side by side. I would like to bring in more personal clients for me that are more within my passion that don't fit into impact partners.
Nice.
There's some AI companies that I've already started working with both through impact partners and on my own. I'd like to keep moving in that direction because AI is fascinating and interesting. And
Agreed.
beyond that, I just want to get a really big story somewhere because I haven't gotten a huge hit in about a year and a half, and I'm
Chase.
about due.
Love the chase. It's kind of addicting, right? I mean, I remember like I have the first article I ever wrote that was on the front page of the Globe. I still have framed and I look at it all the time. I've got media coverage and frames that I just go back to. The weird thing is reading old coverage that's like over a decade old and the language around the World Wide Web. And like, ooh, I'm kind of getting the gray in the beer, but it's been a great ride. Clearly, it's not over. So when people want to network with you and learn more about your work and connect, where can they find you, Bob? Where can they network with you?
There's a couple of different ways. They can check me out on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn/in/Bob Friedland. I try to make it easy by using my name. And you can also check me out on my website, teamrexpop.com.
Excellent. Appreciate that. Well, this has been fun. I'm super jealous in your previous lives, got to play with toys and Arkham City and all that kind of stuff because that game was wicked hard. I mean, I got to the last end of it. I wanted to just take the machine and just bash it with it, like from that scene in Office Space when they take the printer out to the land and they smash it up. I got so frustrated, but really excited to meet you through TCN, learn more about your work, find ways for you and I to collaborate. Appreciate you sharing your story. Appreciate you being here in the PR bunker. And again, it's a little bit of a cap. You're the last guest for this session for this particular year, but I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. It was great being here, and thanks for having me.
No problem. Happy New Year, my man. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the PR Bunker, the last of 2025. I can't believe it's here. 26 is knocking on the door, and who knows what this year is going to hold for us. But one thing is certain, here at the Bunker, we're still going to be hunkered down, working with our mission-driven and impact-focused organizations. But most importantly, telling the stories of the people that we work with, the people that we network with, the folks that we meet, because telling their stories has been really, really important this year and has been a big part of my journey as I ramped up the Bunker and got this whole thing going a handful of years ago. So I'm so lucky to be here, to be able to, in this position, to tell the stories of very talented people that work in public relations, communications, the nonprofit space, and those that are just generally changing the lives of other people in a positive way. So I appreciate you being part of this community, appreciate you subscribing to this podcast and sharing it. And again, if you want to have your client, or if you fit the Bunker vibe and you want to be on this podcast, please feel free to hit the website, prbunker.com. And at the bottom of the site, there's a link to fill out the application to be on this podcast. But I love telling other people's stories and helping out as much as I possibly can. But again, I can't thank you all enough. From my team to yours, thank you for being part of the PR Bunker community, subscribing and listening to this podcast, and I'll see you in 2026.